All right, we're back. Welcome to the Dear Family Courts podcast. We are in our lifestyles series. My name is Lisa Welter. This is my friend Jen Knesny.
Hello.
Good to have you guys with us. We're in, this is episode number 2 of the lifestyles series. And we've been really contemplating this idea that if we're going to have conversations and build restorative practices into our lives, it starts with the one who's choosing to bring this into our households and into our significant relationships. We've just seen a number of casualties, maybe would be a good way to say this, when people are using this and it turns into a weapon in the circumstances or the issue that they're really, hoping for justice in. And when we spend time working on our own internal needs and areas of maybe that might not be balanced out very well, this can be a benefit to our entire family as we think about what this means to bring restorative practices into our homes. So today, Jen, we're going to talk about feeling conflicted on the inside. Like, what do I do with that? What does that mean? Like, women who are listening to this might be thinking, gosh, I've got this issue that I'd really like to work on. But I think when we think about that, we have to start with, why is it bothering me in the first place? What's going on inside of me that's causing this conflict to surface up? And I think it's really an important place to talk and spend our time.
I totally agree. We just, in our last episode, you heard us talk about just kind of really getting a handle on like just discovering yourself. Like, what's your relationship like with yourself?
Yeah.
And so we kind of want to give a little more parameters around that. Like, what's a way you can start to unpack that? So this is kind of the practical how-to.
Totally.
And so one of the things that we've talked about a lot is that there are these 4 key relationships. And those are the things you're going to want to look at to achieve wholeness, to become more yourself, to become more fulfilled and satisfied. You want to talk a little bit more about that, Lisa?
Well, these 4 key relationships drive everything. When we think about how humans are hardwired, we are hardwired for relationships, and we are seeking to bring resolution and restoration in our relationships. As women, we tend to be kind of the nurturers, so this is natural for us. It may not be a point of great awareness sometimes for men, because they are also hardwired for relationships, but they might have other needs that are surfacing to the top rather than just the relationship dynamic itself. And I think for women, we're so hypersensitive to the balance of the relationships. We're looking for, like, what's wrong? Why did he say that? Is he mad at me? And oh no, what did I, it's that stuff that we internalize, and sometimes that can be actually a detriment. But there was a man, his name is Thomas Chalmers, and he was a 17th century theologian. He was also a moral philosopher, and he was doing a lot of work in pastoral care, but he was also doing work with the poor in his community. And what he learned is all of us as human beings have these 4 key relationships that we're trying to bring into healthy balance. And so we will spend all of our life maintaining a sense of balance or finding balance in these 4 key relationships. First is a relationship with God. We are all spiritual beings. Whether you believe in God or not, you have put him somewhere in a box, or he doesn't exist, or he does exist, and it's a focal point of your life. That key relationship with God is an important, or spirituality is just a really important relationship that we have to address. The second relationship is a relationship with ourselves. How do we view ourselves? Are we in a healthy relationship with ourselves, or do we have a negative self-image? When we don't have a healthy relationship with ourselves, things can go sideways quickly. The third one is a relationship with our family. It might be like the tribe that you are connected to. It might not be your biological family. It could just be a group of friends that you're connected to. If we don't have a community that we're attached to, this can be terribly challenging for individuals. That sense of isolation is truly detrimental to the human spirit. And so the third relationship is that relationship with community. And then last, your relationship with your sense of purpose, your sense of contribution to the world. What am I put on earth to do? And if you don't have a direction you're going in, that can be challenging as well. And so you can see when any of these key relationships get out of whack, it creates conflict. What Thomas Chalmers said is these 4 key relationships are broken from the very beginning. And we are working as human beings to put that into right relationship. So there's this process of reconciliation that is happening. Chalmers says that all of us have poverty in our lives. And I think that's really interesting. And he was relating it to the families that he was serving that were poor. They were materially poor. They had a lack of housing or a lack of food or whatever. But he says that we are all coming from a place of brokenness, and we have to acknowledge that as human beings, that we are putting that back into right relationship. And so that is the premise of why we do what we do. That is kind of the unique work of addressing conflict that we do at the Catalasso group. This is how we train our leaders. When we understand these 4 key relationships and how we're hardwired, and that these really are in a place of brokenness until we address and bring them back into healthy relationship. This is where we see conflict arise in our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's really interesting. We had this conversation in the previous podcast talking about vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what's really important to understand as you're entering into this work of looking at the 4 key relationships and figuring out, hey, where am I doing well? Where am I struggling a little bit? That you want to enter into it with a bit of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And be willing to look at things without shaming yourself or understanding that these 4 key relationships are going to be something that are in flux your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you grow and the more you learn, you might circle back around to a different section and be like, hey, I'm experiencing some turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
Where am I out of whack? And just being able to stay in a conversation about that in a supportive environment.
Yep.
Which is why we provide certain environments and tools and things that we'll be talking more about. But it's a beautiful process, and it really is nice to have some guidelines and a way to apply what we're learning instead of just learning things and then never applying them. So.
Yeah, and again, this conversation is coming from a place of prevention. How do we as human beings know how to live in right community with each other, but also look at our own self-needs? And when we think about conflict, so frequently we see people addressing conflict from dividing time, dividing resources, dividing assets. We're not necessarily always looking at the relational side of things. And so this is where I think it brings so much beauty into the area of conflict resolution, is that we are going after the relationships, those 4 key relationships. If we can help people put those, or at least begin the process of putting them back into healthy balance, conflict is just going to naturally resolve because they're healthy and whole in their own sense of self and how they are navigating life. So today we're going to use a talking piece. We're back to the circle, guys. Some of this is about just modeling and showing you what it means to be in circle, what it looks like, and giving you that perspective that it may feel a little uncomfortable at first. It's kind of like my analogy of going to the gym. Like, oh my gosh, like, it may feel a little uncomfortable, but then you see, like, if everyone's jumping in and participating, you become more comfortable. You start adapting and building the muscle to do this. And so these first few are just going to be us modeling it for you. So today we have our talking piece. I'm using, again, my gold heart. When I have the talking piece, I am speaking freely. I can pass the talking piece to Jen, and Jen is then speaking. If I don't have the talking piece, I am simply a participant actively listening, and I'm not interrupting the person who is speaking. And so if we were together in a space, if our viewers were with us, we'd be sitting in a circle. There'd be nothing in between us. And we'd be using the conversation, we'd be facilitating the conversation with this talking piece. So, all right. So first things first, Jen, there's these 4 key relationships. We'll actually put them on the bottom of the screen too for those of you to remind you what these 4 key relationships are. A relationship with God, a relationship with yourself, a relationship with your community or your family, and then that relationship with your contribution to the world or your purpose or your work. What is the strongest area for you? I'm going to actually let you go first.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll first.
So typically in circle, the one who's posing the question would go first, just to produce the kind of the vulnerable atmosphere that you're looking for. But I'm going to let Jen answer this question first. What is the strongest relationship, or maybe 2 of them, in your life right now?
Okay. Gosh. Well, I'm going to say the strongest for me right now, which is really a victory in my life, is the relationship with my work and purpose. Lisa knows my story, and if any of you have been listening to the podcast for any amount of time, you've heard our stories, or a lot of our stories, and things we've grown in and been through, achieved, failed, whatever. But my work and purpose has been this sort of painful joy almost my entire life. I've always been, since I was little, I've always been very vocationally oriented. Even when I was a little girl, I was like, I just wanted to make my mark on the world and figure out what I dream about and what I want to do. And so for me, work and purpose has been a driving force in my life. I have left no stone unturned in that lane. And over the couple of decades that I've really been working or pursuing calling and purpose and work, I've been through iterations. I've been trying to find it. And I do feel like I'm finally in a season where there's a lot of convergence of all of the things I've experienced, learned, grown in, again, successes, failures. And so I feel very strong in that area of my life right now. And it's a first, and I'm 47 and a half, and I'm just starting to see the fruit of all those years of investing and trying and working. And so for me, that's a strong one. If I had to pick that is the strongest, or the one that jumps out to me right now. So how about you, Lisa?
Ooh, boy, I was like, ooh, yes. I think that's mine too. And
You
then
can
I was
have
like,
that.
no, I think so that's a runner up. That's a contender. I would say there's two. It's my sense of purpose, contribution to the world. But I would say it's my relationship with myself. And I was actually just telling you the other day, we went and had our headshots done, and I was looking at the pictures thinking like, oh my gosh, these turned out so great. But I was telling Jen, like, I didn't even recognize like myself. I've changed so much on the inside and just become so who I'm supposed to be and okay with that. It's taken a long time to get there. And so I'm just like really thrilled that I've come to that place. That's been like an area of strength, I would say, for me. First in many years. And I would say a lot of this, for everybody who's watching, it's my friend Jen who's helped me through that process. So it's been pretty cool. All right, so then what would be an area, Jen, that has been an area that might need the dust to like come off of it? We need to like get the dustpan out and clean it up a little bit. Or maybe it's just an area that needs a little tune-up. I wouldn't say it's a weak area, but it's probably just an area that requires a tune-up. You want to go first?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, this is an easy one. I have the opposite. My self relationship box is needing some work right now. I have always been like wired for like, I'm fairly other centered. So for me, and those actually are areas that needed balance too, because I was so other centered and like looking around and seeing the suffering and meeting the needs and wearing myself out. Sometimes for sometimes for good intentions, and sometimes for maybe not as good intentions, if I'm being really honest with myself. Sometimes I've been out there kind of serving others or doing for others because I was feeling isolated or lonely, or I needed to find some worthiness, or was getting my identity out of it. And so that's not good, but I feel like that's in a really good spot right now. But for me, it's the self one. It's, I'm in a new season. I'm in new territory. My son's getting a little older. I'm in this new like work and purpose field that's just going so well. I feel like things with God are good. And I'm looking at like, where have I backburnered myself? Where am I now needing to prepare myself for a bigger level of capacity? Like, I need to make sure my self-care is dialed in because of where I'm entering into in my work and purpose, and where I'm entering into just in this season of my life. And I'm realizing like that has got to be a priority. I have to make sure I'm taking care of my body and I'm nourishing myself, that I have good sleep and lots of energy. And like, I have built the muscle of putting myself last, and now I have to build the muscle of prioritizing those things, just so that I am enjoying my life more for my own sake. Mm-hmm. And so I would say for me, that's something I'm definitely working on right now. Go, Lisa.
Okay. That's really interesting to think about. Like, you've touched on some areas I'm like, yeah, I probably should work on a little bit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So there's more. There's always room to grow, right? In all of these key relationships. I think it's a matter of just being aware of like, oh, I'm entering into a new season. I have to like kind of pick that one back up and look at it again. I would say for me, the area would probably be with my community. So family, like I'm reestablishing some new boundaries. Kids are all young adults. We've moved out of the season of raising teenagers, which has been difficult. And I've been tired. I've just been tired. I think it's a celebration to watch, who my kids are becoming. But now I'm in that recalibration stage of we're empty nesters. I don't even know what this looks like. Am I supposed to just like take a break? I don't know. I actually don't know what this is supposed to look like. And I think it's a new season for us as our kids are finishing college, developing relationships. I think it's going to be a quieter season, and I don't know what normal looks like anymore with kids that are grown and what those expectations should be and how far should I be like coaching and these children who sometimes don't want to hear from me and sometimes they do. So I would say it's not in a bad spot, but it's definitely a season of I don't know what this is going to look like. So I'm going to pass it back to you for any thoughts, and maybe you'd like to tell them what you've created, Jen.
Oh my gosh. So exciting. Final thoughts, I would say it's just, I hope that as we're sharing that you're starting to think about your own life. And again, like we had said in the last podcast, take these questions. We're going to have them in our show notes and posted on the YouTube video with 4 key relationships information we talked about, and like grab a friend that you trust, someone that would be easy to have this conversation with, and just practice circle and just see what comes out, like what you're going to say. And I think a lot of people are going to relate and resonate with the answers we gave. I think women, we are always, looking at what do we need to fix? And sometimes that's with us too. And sometimes we're very hard on ourselves, and that's not really helpful. It's helpful to look at what's in conflict, and then it's helpful to lean in and start to ask the questions like, well, what do I need to change? Or what can I work on that is going to give you more life and aliveness and wholeness? That is the goal. It's not to be hard on yourself. So we'll have those questions for you to answer. And then, yes, we have been working on a leadership self-assessment. I am a total assessment junkie. I'm a big fan of understanding, because I want to cultivate connectedness and have people thriving in relationships, whatever those relationships might be, the 4 key ones. Yeah. I love assessments because they're very telling. They give you insight about how you're wired, how other people are wired. And all of that just cultivates understanding and connection and empathy. And those are good things that lead to good relationship. And so it is inevitable that Lisa actually asked me to craft some questions and an assessment. And we are looking for a way better name right now than leadership self-assessment. So maybe we should have a contest and have people chime in and give us ideas.
That's a great idea.
But you'd have to really get to know us so that it's on point with who we are. But we've got this great assessment that actually addresses these 4 key relationships. And it gives you an opportunity to answer some of the questions so that if you're not really sure, you could answer these off the top of your head. But if you're not really sure or don't have a lot of self-awareness right now around those 4 key relationships and where they might be in conflict for you or where certain ones might be in conflict for you, this is going to give you a pretty good idea of to measure just where are you right now. So we're going to put a link to that assessment in this post, and we encourage you to go take it. Get on there, go through there. It's going to give you some instant results to let you know where you're at. It's also going to give us your information, which don't worry about that. It just automatically does that. But it's also a way for us to be able to connect with you, or you to connect with us if you're you want to lean in on well, what are some resources? And we'll be posting more about that on our website as well, just giving you some direction for what you can do with that information. But have fun with it. Send it to your friends. You all could just take it, or you and your spouse, just to get a sense of where things are. And it's just so you can go more towards that wholeness that we all want. We want peace, we want joy, we want connection, we want fulfillment.
Yeah.
We want all of those things. And so that's what this is for. So
yeah, there's no strings attached. It's just meant to be a useful tool for you. And we're trying to come up with a name for it. We're actually using this in our trainings that we offer to leaders that are developing the skills for mediation and circles. But it's available to you for free. And so if you just want to take the assessment just for the fun of it, we encourage you to do that. And there'll be some specific ways you can think about how to bring more balance to your life. So, yeah. That's all I've got. What about you?
I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, get a friend and do these.
Yes.
Answer these questions. Learn more about your community and your friendships and relationships. And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.